Algebra 1, Sensei Learning System, Lesson 3. We will be evaluating these expressions using order of operations. Since exponents are the highest, well, really parentheses are the highest, but our parentheses are really simple. So exponents will be the next highest, so we're going to expand these. So this will become a 4 times a 3 times a 3, expanding this right here, minus 3 times a 2 times a 2. Okay, once I have expansion and the exponents are gone, I can do my multiplication now. 4 times, say, 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 4 is 36. And here, I have a negative times a positive, so that'll be a negative. And this will be a 3 times a 4, which is 12. And then these are not the same signs, so we can subtract. So 36 minus 12 will be 24. And it'll be positive because the 36 is positive. Here, we have our 4. And the negative 3 will be written twice because the exponent is 2. So negative 3, negative 3. And this is a negative 3. And behind it would be negative 2 twice because its exponent is a 2. Okay, now that everything's expanded, I have 4 times 3 times 3. That'll be 4 times 9, which is 36. We also have a negative times a negative. And a negative times a negative is positive, so it's positive 36. Here, I have a 3 times a 4, which is 12. And we have a negative times a negative times a negative. 3 negatives will be negative, so that'll be negative 12. And 36 and a negative 12, these are different signs, so we'll subtract. We'll get 24, and 36 is positive. Okay, next. We have here a third power, so it will be 4 times 3 times 3 times 3. That's your expansion there. The next one is negative 3, and the expansion of a 2, which will be 2 times 2 times 2. Okay, now, this essentially will be a multiply. This will be a 12 times a 9. See, 9 times a 12 will be 120 minus 12. And so that'll be 108, I believe. Okay. Here we'll have a 6 times a 4, that'll be 24. And we do have 1 negative times 3 positives, so that'll be negative. Okay. Now let's subtract these here. 4 from 8 leaves 4, and 2 from 10 leaves 8. So that's a positive 84. Next, number 4. I'll have a negative 4 first, and then, oh, I forgot my power here. I forgot what it intended to be. Let's put a 2 here. Okay, so we'll expand that twice. So this will be a negative 3 and a negative 3. This will be next will be a negative 3, and we'll expand this into 3 negative 2's. Okay, now let's multiply. Okay, this will be 4 times 9, which is 36. And we have 3 negatives multiplying, so that'll be a negative 36. This will be a 6 times 4, which will be 24. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives multiplying, so that'll be a positive 24. Different signs will subtract, and we'll end up with a 12. The bigger number is the negative 36, so this will be a negative 12. Next, number 5. This will be a 4. We're going to expand the negative 1, so this will be a negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. And next comes a negative 3, and we'll expand the negative 2. That'll be a negative 2 and times negative 2. So here, this will be 4 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is 4. And you have 1, 2, 3 negatives multiplying, so this will be a negative 4. Here, this will be a 3 times a 4, which is 12. And we have 1, 2, 3 negatives. That'll be a negative. We have same signs, they'll add, and we'll get 16, and we use the sign of the bigger number, so this will be negative 16. Next, we have 4, and we expand the negative 1 into negative 1 times negative 1. And then you have negative 3, and we'll expand the negative 2 into a negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Okay, so 4 times 1 times 1 will be 4. This will be a 6 times 4, and that's 24. Oh, sorry, but 2 negatives here, that's positive. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives, that'll also be positive. So when we add these, we're going to get 28. Number 7 here. This negative here, we're going to make into a negative 1. And then we're going to expand the negative 4 into a negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. Then this will be negative here. And we could make that into a negative 1 as well, but I like changing it into leading to negatives. And I'll expand this into negative 4, negative 4, negative 4. Okay. So 1 times 4, well, basically it's going to be 4 times 16, which is 64. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives, which is positive. Here I have 4 times 16, which is 64 as well. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 positives. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives, which is positive. And so when I add these, I'll get 128. Number 8. We have a negative 3, and we expand this into negative 1 times negative 1. Next we have a negative 2, and we'll expand this into a negative 1 times negative 1. Let's multiply. This will basically be 3 times 1, which is 3. We have 1, 2, 3 negatives, so that'll be negative. 2 times 1 is 2, and we essentially have 3 negatives here, so that'll be negative. And same signs will add. We get 5, and I use the sign of the bigger number, negative 5.